There are 15 members of the Phantom Troupe, and today we are ranking all of them. Here's the criteria I used to make this list. Now let's get started with number 15, which is Kurapika. It really should be no surprise to see Kurapika at last on this list. The dude is like 3 feet tall and is easily the most punchable character in Hunter x Hunter. On top of being the weakest in terms of physicality, Kurapika's ability is also purely support. Like there's absolutely nothing offensively good about his cloning ability on its own. It almost feels like he was only brought into the troupe for the York New auction, and even the spider at 14th is way stronger than him in physicality and in nen. That person being Shizuku. Shizuku is also mostly support based, as she's basically on crime scene cleanup, but unlike Kurapika, her ability can at least be used for offenses. We saw her easily kill 2 Nostrad bodyguards, and she's also strong enough to easily pierce Chimera Ant's skin, which is extremely durable. Shizuku also has a somewhat analytical mind, as she was instrumental to deciphering the troops' fortunes, and she also figured out a way to defeat Pike fairly easily. At number 13, we have Paku. Paku is once again a support unit, but she does have the advantage of being able to fight from a range with her dual pistols. She's also at least physically strong because she was able to crush Squala's arms with her bare hands, and she also seems to possess a degree of intelligence because she was quickly able to disseminate the best way to navigate her hostage situation. Unfortunately, that is where the pros end for her. I mean, she's got 2 more, but in terms of strength, she doesn't really have anything else going for her. Her abilities are related to mind reading and sharing said memories. While these are very useful abilities, they're not exactly a good indicator of strength and don't really contribute to her strength in any way. She's also one of the troop members that we don't see a lot of because she dies. And as a result, I have trouble putting her any higher than 13th. Following Paku is Kaluto. Kaluto is a Zolgic, meaning he probably underwent the same training as Killua and his brothers. This means he has access to some assassin techniques such as Rhythm Echo, and he is also most likely resistant to poison and electricity, but we have not seen either of those in action. His abilities lie in paper, and allow him to dish out deadly paper cuts and keep an eye on people that he puts paper onto. These paper cuts were easily able to destroy Chimera Ant Soldier, and when combined with his assassin training, I think he places fairly well in terms of strength. Kaluto actually considers himself to be the weakest member, but I would disagree. While he is very young and physically weak, he did not have any issues with the Chimera Ant, which is pretty impressive for someone of his physicality. But he's also kind of hard to rank because we don't see a ton of him. At number 11, we have Nobunga. Seeing Nobunga at 11 might be a surprise, but he's mostly down here because we don't know a lot about him. We know he's an enhancer and he's one of the attackers of the group. He's also a master of the sword, and he uses that sword to incapacitate people throughout the show. We also know he's able to use End to a certain degree, but it's not that impressive as it's only 4 meters wide, and that's pretty much all we know. We don't know anything about his Nen ability other than it being easily replaceable, and considering how much information we have on just about everyone else's ability, I can't really justify putting him any higher. At number 10, we have Machi. Machi is one of the best support skills in the troupe. Her Nen needles allow her to heal severed limbs in a matter of seconds, track people, as well as allowing her to manipulate people. On top of this, the string's strength is dependent on its length, and it's apparently stronger than steel if it's under 1 meter long. On top of her versatile ability, she's also able to control her muscles to a high degree for some reason, and she also has a strong gut instinct. I had a hard time choosing between her and Nobunga for number 10, but in the end I think Machi would be better at crowd control, which is why I put her above Nobunga. Now let's get into some of the more powerful troop members. But before we do, please subscribe. Look, I'm just gonna be honest, subscribing is the only thing in this world that improves my meager self-esteem, so I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me grow my ego, because it's an important trait for any big YouTuber. So please just scroll down and hit that big red button. Anyway, at number 9, we have Franklin. Franklin is an interesting case. He seems to be level-headed and thoughtful, as well as physically strong. His Nen ability is of course the Nen bullets, which are able to tear through another Nen user's creation with no problem at all. These bullets are very strong because he also cut off his own fingers to make his power easier to use. Despite these traits, we don't see a lot of him, and when we do, it's against people that are much weaker than him. In fact, he's the only troop member that we've never seen go against another Nen user, one-on-one at least. This makes it very hard to rank him because in Hunter x Hunter, Nen battles are the easiest way to gauge someone's strength. It's possible he could beat some people above him, but without more evidence, I can't justify putting him any higher. At number 8, we have Banalanov. Despite looking like the average Andrew Tate viewer, he's actually pretty strong. He has a wide variety of abilities to choose from. He has Battle Cantabile Prologue, which gives him some armor and a spear, and he can also transform into smaller animals using Metamorphosen. Oh yeah, and he can also summon Jupiter, as in the planet Jupiter. This would be crazy enough in a contained space, but the planet will also follow the target as long as they're within ear earshot, which could be a huge range of attack depending on how loud his holes are. What a weird sentence. It is also implied that his abilities become stronger the louder his song is, meaning he can get even stronger depending on how fast he dances and how much clothing he wears. On top of this, he also has immense stamina and was able to tire out a chimera ant before attacking. The reason that he's at 8 and not higher is because he fights kind of like a weakling. For instance, he waits for his opponents to be exhausted rather than fighting them at their peak. This might seem like a small aspect of his character, but none of the troop members from here on out have any negatives to them, so that's why Banalanov is below them. At 7, we have Finks. This dude is very fast and very strong, but to be honest, he doesn't have that much that's extraordinary about him. He's just well balanced and powerful. He was able to kill like 10 Mafia members in a matter of seconds, and he's capable of using Ko, but his main ability is his Ripper Cyclotron, which is basically a punch that gets stronger the more times he cranks his arm. 15 cranks was more than enough to decimate a chimera ant, and by his own estimation, that was almost double what he needed. What's crazy about this ability is, as far as we know, there's no upper limit. Of course, it's very likely that there is an upper limit because there's an upper limit with pretty much everything in Nen, but it's unlikely that it's even needed in the first place because most humans would fold in under 15 cranks anyway. The main drawback to his ability is finding time to crank his arm, but considering how fast he is, it probably wouldn't be a problem for him in most cases. At number 6, we have Uvojin. Uvo is a complete beast of a man. He was the strongest in the arm wrestling contest hands down, and he's the physically strongest out of the entire troop. He's also a master enhancer and was able to take a missile at point blank with no problem at all. Uvo also single-handedly defeated 4 shadow beasts and a large portion of the Mafia. Being an enhancer, he's extremely balanced in offense and defensive capabilities, which would make him very hard to deal with for most people. I say most people because, well, you know. His Big Bang Punch created an enormous crater when detonated, and even his run was capable of destroying a mountain from a distance. He easily broke Kurapika's arm, which was most likely reinforced with Nen, and he also seems somewhat intelligent, as he was able to quickly ascertain how much of a threat Kurapika was before he got buried. On top of that, he's also poison resistant, as it took a ton of paralyzing gas to keep him secure. I really don't have anything negative to say about him, it's just that I think the next 5 are straight up stronger in a fight. At 5, we have Shalnark. Seeing Shalnark all the way up here might be a bit of a surprise, but it makes sense once you break down his abilities. Shalnark is a manipulator, meaning he is extremely dangerous in combat. Manipulators have the unique combat trait that all they have to do to win a fight is fulfill their manipulation conditions. This is because once the victim is under the manipulator's control, the victim is at the manipulator's mercy, and for Shalnark, that condition is simply putting a needle in the back of the neck. That's the only thing he has to do to assure victory. This same ability, Black Voice, can also be used as a great support tool, as it allows high control of a single subject, including complex motor function and perfect speech. And on top of this ability, he also has autopilot, which is basically a Super Saiyan in Hunter x Hunter. This gives him a huge boost of strength and speed with fairly limited drawbacks. It also prevents Shalnark himself from being manipulated when it's active. On top of these abilities, he's also a genius and is widely seen as the second smartest person in the troop behind Chrollo. Between his ability to win a fight very easily, autopilot, and his high intellect, I think it's easy to put Shalnark at number 5. Following Shalnark is Phaeton. Phaeton's main strength is his speed. He's able to move so fast that even Kaluto has trouble following him. This speed is paired excellently with his high endurance and mastery of the sword. He also demonstrates that he can use Ko. Everything we've talked about so far was demonstrated while he was out of shape during his fight with Zazan, which he was winning until he used Ko, which backfired on him. Even after this, he still easily dispatched the ant using his ability. This ability is the main reason that he's at 4th. If you thought summoning Jupiter was impressive, try the sun. Summoning a miniature star would be crazy on its own, but it's heavily insinuated that he has other abilities, which are most likely at a similar power as well. This ability completely blew up a castle and would have killed every other troop member inside if they had not escaped. And on top of this, he's also a master torturer, but I don't know if that's a sign of strength or just sadism. He ranked 5th in the arm wrestling competition as well, and that's while being quite small physically, so take that however you will. Getting the bronze medal and coming in at 3rd is Illumi. Seeing Illumi up here might be a surprise to some people as well, but he's an extremely versatile and cold fighter. Remember what I said about manipulators being able to win on one condition? Well, Illumi's condition is like Shalnark, except it can be stuck anywhere in the skull. He has 3 different needles at his disposal. The first ones are the big ones. These are used to create needlemen, which are basically zombies that are controlled by Illumi. He can create dozens at once, and for the most part they seem to be low functioning, but it appears with a couple needles in the forehead he can even get them to talk or drive. The next is corpse control. control, which is what we see happen with the 10 Dons. These puppets are always capable of high motor function, but they take more time to create than the needle people. And the final needle is the hypnotic needle, which we saw used on Killua. This one doesn't directly control the victim, but it will affect their judgment in general. On top of all of this offense, he's also capable of disguising himself as pretty much anyone he wants. And he also underwent assassin training, meaning he's most likely electricity resistant and poison immune. Illumi has a huge amount of tools at his disposal, including tools that allow him to win fights instantly. And if that's not enough to convince you that he's strong, he was also rated as a 95 out of 100 by Hisoka, which means he's comparable in strength to the pedophile clown. Speaking of the clown, he is our member at number 2. Honestly, I feel like Chrollo and Hisoka are almost interchangeable, but I do think Chrollo has a slight edge, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Hisoka's main ability is Bungee Gum, which possesses the properties of both rubber and gum. While this is an extremely simple ability, it is also extremely versatile. He's able to tether his aura to himself and other things, including objects and people. He can also disguise it with Een, which gives him an extra layer of trickery. He uses Bungee Gum many times throughout the show and on many people and objects, demonstrating its power. He uses it to beat a multitude of characters, including Castro, Gon, Godo, and the ability is also instrumental in defeating Razor. Hisoka is also the troop member we see the most, even if he's not in the troop anymore. He also has a second ability in Texture Surprise. While this ability isn't great in combat, it does have its uses as we saw against Castro, and it's also likely that it will be more useful after his loss to Chrollo. But we haven't seen this new version yet, so it's kind of hard to tell. Speaking of his loss to Chrollo, Hisoka becomes even more dangerous after he brings himself back to life. This is most likely due to the effects of Nen after death. He is now able to construct entire limbs out of rubber, which is something he wasn't able to do before. We don't know exactly how this will affect him, but it will most likely give him much more flexibility. It has the potential to be extremely strong and sneaky, which is a combination we already know Hisoka will make great use of. So what is it that puts him below Chrollo? Well, I think Chrollo has two main aspects that set him apart from the rest of the troop. The first is his extreme intellect. Intelligence is an extremely important aspect of strength in Hunter x Hunter. This is because the faster you can decipher your opponent's ability, the faster you will be able to exploit it. Chrollo has already demonstrated his analytical and emotional intelligence on a number of occasions, and even his ability relies on this intelligence, as there are a large amount of conditions that must be met before Skill Hunter can actually steal an ability. This ability, Skill Hunter, is the second aspect that I think sets Chrollo apart. Skill Hunter gives Chrollo a large amount of abilities that he can use whenever he needs to. Nobody except Chrollo knows exactly what abilities or how many abilities he has on him, and that alone is extremely dangerous. We know he has access to the Sun and Moon ability and the Stamp one, and we also know other troop members are willing to let him borrow their abilities if need be. He becomes an even better fighter in the manga when he invents the bookmark technique. This technique allows him to use two abilities at once if he has the book out, or use just one ability but without the need to hold the book. He has stated that this new ability means his conditions are even more high than they were before, but that hasn't stopped him from obtaining new abilities, and it seems he still has old abilities at his disposal as well. He was able to use these abilities to beat Hisoka very cleanly. However, this fight was in Chrollo's advantage from the very beginning, because Chrollo got to choose the environment in which the fight happened, and he had over a year to gather the abilities that he needed to ensure his victory. It's hard to say which one of these two would win in a rematch. Chrollo has lost two of the abilities that he used to beat Hisoka due to, and Hisoka has become more powerful thanks to his post-mortem transformation. On top of this, it's likely that a rematch would not happen in a controlled environment like Heaven's Arena, and it might even happen in an environment that favors Hisoka. I would love to hear who you think would win this rematch in the comments down below. But for now, that is the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this ranking. I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe, and if you are, maybe check out the Patreon or the Discord. I'll see you again next week for another video. Bye!